Hello, hello. This is Alex Burkett, and you are listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, I'm chatting with Andy Crestodina. Andy is the co-founder and chief marketing officer at Orbit Media Studios, an award-winning web design firm based in Chicago. In my opinion, he's also one of the most interesting voices in content marketing, constantly sharing super tactical and insightful stuff about SEO, analytics, content, and web design. In this episode, we cover a ton, ranging from Andy's new approach to account-based content marketing that I'm totally going to steal for our agency, to his holistic approach to content marketing strategy. We cover contrarian opinions like how social traffic is overrated maybe, and maybe less visible metrics are more important. We also go on a few interesting diversions, talking about Chicago architecture and the best deep dish pizza in Chicago. You're going to love this conversation. It's packed with value. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Andy Crestodina. Did you grow up near Chicago, or have you always been in that area?
No, I was born in Milwaukee, actually.
Oh, no way.
So if you're from, and then lived as a little kid, like in Prairie du Chien and Milwaukee. And then moved to the Chicago burbs, grew up totally in the Chicago burbs, college in Iowa City. And then moved into after that, and, traveled, lived abroad, came back, and then moved into the city in 99. So I've lived in Chicago proper since 99.
Nice. Yeah, I grew up on the Prairie du Chien side of the state near Platteville, if you're familiar.
Okay, sure. Yep.
So I spent a lot of time down in Galena, Illinois, all that stuff. So you're a Hawkeyes fan then?
Not really. I'm an Iowa alum, but I'm not I'm sort of out of the loop on sports stuff mostly.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I follow in sports nowadays is college stuff. But I feel like even that I've been out of the loop. So I'm trying to rep Wisconsin for the March Madness.
There you go.
But
good
honestly,
for you.
I don't think I've watched a single game this year.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's changing.
For sure. So interview wise, I don't think I gave you much prep, but basically it's super informal. We'll talk a lot about content. I'm interested in your book too. I think we talked about that on our office hours. Like it's something that we're interested in doing. So I'd love to hear more about that. But I think generally speaking, you've just got some really interesting views on content that I want to explore, content and SEO and all that stuff.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. When websites are the topic, then a question like, how what's a big missed opportunity on most people's websites? One of the great answers to that is sites would be much stronger if they just added evidence. And on this article, I've got two side-by-side kind of mock-ups and one of them just shows the little ways: logos, awards, partners, testimonials, video testimonials, data, statistics, charts, trust, seals, certifications, memberships, awards. It's not expensive. It's not time-consuming. And every B2B service page on the internet would be stronger with a few more of these elements. Mm-hmm. Most web pages are just piles of unsupported marketing claims. So that comes up sometimes, but it's kind of adjacent to content and SEO.
Do you want to start there? Actually, I'm pretty intrigued by that because I think we had talked about on a past podcast about case studies.
Sure.
One thing that has been in my general attention sphere has been in the content marketing agency space. Nobody's publishing case studies. I think they probably use them in their sales materials, but I look at other websites of competitors that come up on calls and I don't see much. But then I look at Client Boost. You're familiar with Jonathan Dane and his agency. On his site, they've got, I think it's on the second viewport on the homepage. They say, our agency has more case studies than your agency has clients or something like that. And they've got some 620 case studies. So how do you, I would love to go specific. How do you guys look at social proof at Orbit?
Well, any marketing claim you make that doesn't have some form of evidence is a weak statement. It's not supported. It's like going to court with no evidence. So you end up with a page that just is it's undifferentiated. Pages without evidence are largely just undifferentiated marketing content. They're just a bunch of unsupported claims. So social proof is a way to build trust, to give the person's reasons to believe, to trigger cognitive bias. The point being, you will have a higher conversion rate if your pages support your marketing claims with evidence. Now, there's one format for content that is evidence, and that is the case study. Is it a story? Does it check a lot of boxes of content marketing? Absolutely. Is it a traditional blog post article, helpful, informative thing? No, it's not. It's on the overlap in the Venn diagram between copy and content. Copy as in conversion, content as in, content strategy, content marketing. So I think that when we build sites, we don't make pages that lack evidence. We insist the client gives us some kind of testimonial or a data point or some proof. Put those logos, client logos, high on the homepage. And one of the few types of content that I would link to from a service page would be the case study. I would rarely, if ever, link from a service page to a blog post, because that visitor is going upwards through the funnel. You want to send visitors from blog posts to service pages, but don't send people from service pages to blog posts, because you're sending people from a page optimized to generate a lead to a page optimized to maybe get their email address. It's got social sharing. That's not a lead gen page. The template wasn't built for it. The content wasn't written for it. So, what is a case study? Problem, solution, result, or something similar. And the point is to build trust. So it's a skill that content marketers have, but rarely use for that purpose. And it's an asset that can be extremely strong for sales support, bottom of funnel, for any website.
I feel like a lot of what you talk about tends to be oriented around trust. So the web design stuff, the social proof. And one thing that I've noticed about your content strategy, I think you're famous relatively for original research, right? You talk about putting out original research as, I think one part of it is a link magnet, but I think another part of it is the fact that you can back up all your claims in your content. Do you look at this in the same general sphere of basically bolstering your claims with trust? Or I guess, how do you look at original research and the work you're doing there?
It depends on the research itself. So research creates data points. Data points are credible. They're visually prominent because they're numbers, and they're credible because they're data. They're presumably some rigor behind the methodology. So a piece of research that produces a data point that's interesting and makes news, that can create a link benefit, that can be content marketing, that's gets shared and whatever. But if the data point that you create actually supports a sales message, you can use original research that's strictly for conversion, right? It's here's an example. Something like 75% of the analytics accounts that I view are not completely set up. What is that? That's me putting a data point on a gap, on a problem, that's highlighting the size of a problem. My next statement is, and this is something that we fix. It's part of every project. We do it automatically. It's routine for us. Oh, great. So there's an issue and these people solve the issue. But for me to say lots of accounts aren't set up, okay, that's fine. But for me to say 75% of the 500 analytics accounts I've been given access to were not completely set up yet, that's much more compelling. So it makes messages more credible, messages for sales or messages that are just interesting, helpful, useful content marketing pieces.
I feel like you could also go in and that could be like a sales enablement message. I've seen other agencies and actually other SaaS companies do this where they almost grade people on a maturity curve, so to speak. So they've got these data points, like maybe your analytics setup, maybe a checklist as to your landing page best practices. And you go through and you say, you've got 5 out of 10 of these. And basically we can help you get to 10 out of 10. And maybe you could use that as part of the sales appeal, as also, putting it on your website, but also during the sales process.
I do exactly that when I do account-based marketing. So I have a virtual assistant review 100 websites in a specific industry. And then I go analyze that data and I find whoa, here, I'll give you some specific points. We do it for different industries. I did it once for manufacturing. But I discovered that in the manufacturing industry, 51% of manufacturing companies have homepage headlines that don't even say what they do. They're just vague, right? It's pioneering a better way. What? Right. So why don't companies? So I'm highlighting I'm demonstrating expertise. I'm sharing an insight. I'm starting with a data point. But I'm going to have just a better webinar and a more interested audience if I don't just say, yeah, make sure your homepage headline's descriptive. Instead, I say 51%, more than half of you guys out there aren't even saying what you do at the top of your homepage. What the heck, man? This is a problem. We got to fix this. This is a better way. So it just strengthens the message. by making it more credible, more believable. Why would you listen to me? Why would you listen to anybody? Well, you listen to data, and anyone can use it. You don't have to be a famous person or a well-known name or a thought leader to do a study and come up with an insight and share it with others.
I want to unpack the whole ABM content thing, because I know you gave the talk on office hours about that, and that was so fascinating to us. We're still trying to crack the code and figure this out for ourselves. So the first part of that, you mentioned basically coming up with a list of target accounts in a specific industry.
Mm-hmm.
How specific do you get? How do you come up with that list? How do you identify that ICP? Or like, how do you basically, partition those lists of how many companies?
So it depends on where you are. So we look at it and we say, where do we have good examples of success? What type of clients that we work with are good decision makers? Even things like who pays their bills on time. Which industry can afford to do this kind of thing at a high level? Like manufacturing, for example, that's a sleepy industry with a lot of like poor performing websites, and you can make a huge difference. Sometimes a new lead for them is worth $1 million. So just stand back and say, what's status quo? How easy is it to beat status quo? How valuable is it to beat status quo? Where do I have stories of success? And then say, okay, there it is. We're going to target manufacturers in that example. So that's the ICP. After that, it's basically LinkedIn, because account-based marketing is you're targeting businesses. Yeah, actually, you're targeting people. You're not contacting a business. No one's ever contacted a business. You contacted people at the business, right? So go through LinkedIn, put in the job title, put in the industry, put in the geography, put in whatever maps against your ICP. And then
you're trying to find decision makers here. This is like director and above, or like, what are you kind of aiming for in terms of the contact?
For us, so depending on the industry, there may be different types of decision makers. Web development, it's often VPs and VPs of marketing, directors of marketing. Other decision makers, other industries, it might be like a technology person or procurement or whatever. It just depends on who. Just go look and see what they wrote on the title for the last 20 projects you sold. Who's writing checks? So whose signature do you want? So that's who you're going to target. That you're identifying them, and then it's the slog. You're going to be building these relationships. You're going to contact. You're going to outreach. You're going to follow up. You're going to interact and comment and like and share. But then connect and invite. Invite to the session. The session where you demonstrate expertise, you roll out your research, you show best practices, worst practices. Everybody leaves thinking they can go do something right away, but they also leave knowing you're the person who doesn't just know the category of digital, but the industry that I'm in. Therefore, you're more likely to be top of mind the next time they're looking for help.
This is probably going to be pretty granular, so forgive me here, but you've got this list of 50 people, 100 people, and you kind of mentioned you warm them up first. So you're going to go and like connect with them on LinkedIn, like share their posts, all that stuff, basically become a familiar face. And then only then after that, do you kind of invite them to a session, which would be a webinar with just this group of people. So this isn't like, you don't want 1,000 people on this webinar. You want those 100 people from this industry specifically.
Yeah. ABM is awesome and weird because numbers don't matter. It's all about quality. If you gave a webinar to one person who hired you, that would be success. It's so different from top of funnel marketing. It's so different from page views and brand awareness. It's more just like straight sales. But I recommend a 2-step process. So you can't send someone a message to invite them to something unless you're connected with them anyway. I guess you could use InMail or ads, which might work. But ideally, it's like, okay, in 6 months, I'm going to be doing ABM to this category. I'm going to do some searches today. I'm going to connect with some people today. I'm going to start liking some comment, following, sharing stuff today. Because those 20 people that you start interacting with sooner are going to know you and know of you and be aware of you when you send that message saying, hey, just quick letting you know, we got this thing coming up. Feel free to jump in. So it's a lot of marketers and outreach managers are just trying to go too fast. If this is a very long game. So, I'm basically contacting only first degree connections to invite them. And I have first degree connections because I've been building these relationships sometimes for years. Not popular advice because I don't have a shortcut for you. No one likes to hear that. Like, sorry, I'm suggesting going the long way because it works really well. But yeah, someone else you talk to might have
the podcast The Long Game. I mean, we're all in on that play.
This is a long game. It's a very long game. So I appreciate that 1,000%.
It sounds like the crucial piece here is that you have a piece of content, original research, or some sort of a presentation that actually caters to this audience and is actually valuable. I mean, without that, you've just got 20 people on a call and you don't really know what to do with them.
You'll have fewer people on the call because your call to action was what? Here I'm going to read.
The sales pitch.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm going to share my own views. That's not exactly why people sign up for stuff.
Right.
I will read to you my the last one that I did. Don't mind sharing it. You're about to hear exactly what this message sounded like. It's a short message because friends don't send super long messages to each other. That you're getting
pitches right away when it's a whole book. It's 4 paragraphs. I'm like, I can't even physically.
Yeah, seriously.
Right now.
Yeah, people don't do that with each other. That's obviously a pitch. You're just trying too hard. Here it is. Hi, so-and-so. And these are not, this is not automated. I'm copying and pasting and changing it for each person. And I send about 60 of these. This one says, Steve. Hi, Steve. Okay, well, hold on. One other thing you're about to hear from me. And this is for a webinar I'm doing next week. On Tuesday, I'm giving the presentation, an ABM presentation. I started to realize that my results weren't growing, and the fix was to reach out to a partner and do a presentation together with a partner. So she's going to present email marketing, and I'm going to present website best practices, and we're going to do it together. She's going to hit up her list, which is 100% health. This is healthcare. I'm doing 100% healthcare, and I'm going to reach out my first degree connections and contact people about healthcare. The net is that we have 100 signups already. So this was quite successful. I'm sure half of those came from her. So it sounds like this. This is my direct message to a first degree connection who has a job title and is in an industry that matches my ICP. And I'm reaching out to do ABM to invite to a webinar. Hi, Steve. I'm teaming up with a friend on a webinar about digital marketing for healthcare related brands. I'm talking about websites. She's talking about email marketing. Should be a good one. Feel free to join or pass this along to someone at your team. So very short, very concise, basically introducing email and websites. When the other type of outreach is actually pitching the research itself, which says, "Hey, Steve, I just finished reviewing 100 websites in your industry, and on Tuesday I'm going to be sharing best practices and some big mistakes. There'll be immediate takeaways for anyone. Feel free to jump in or share this with someone on your team." So in one case, I'm saying, I've got a partner on this, different topics, feel free to join. In another case, I might be saying, I'm presenting data along with practical takeaways, feel free to join. And it sounds so low pressure. It's like 40 words, pretty short.
I was going to say, it sounds non-presumptuous. In most sales outreach, it's like, they almost try to guilt me into coming to this thing as if like I'm, doing everything wrong. And if I don't come to this and I don't buy their tool, it's like, then, obviously I'm going to get fired or something like that. But this sounds like, hey, I've got value, take it or leave it, You're invited.
This took me 15 years to learn, and I'll try to summarize it. People only do things if the perceived return exceeds the perceived investment. So you can increase the perceived return. I'm presenting research. I'm doing this with a partner. I have a new data that's perceived. That's increasing the R. The other way to improve click-through rates, registration rates in this case, is to reduce the I. Hey, feel free to jump in or share this with your team. Mm-hmm. That's zero. That's like very low pressure. So by making the thing sound, you can make the thing sound valuable or make it sound easy. Those are fundamentally the two ways to improve a click-through rate.
Do you talk about how long the session is going to be, or do you give any sort of like a preview on that?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it's 1 hour. Some of these I've followed up with. I'm super confident this will be worth 1 hour of your day.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I also tell people this: if you can't make it, sign up anyway, and we'll send you the recording.
We do that with our office hours.
Yeah,
too. That's definitely compelling.
Yeah,
I sign up for
low pressure
stuff like that, and I'm almost never available on time. But I want to see the recording afterwards.
And you're just acknowledging that. You're just admitting that, and it's fine. It's fine. I tell people that. So all of those are ways. Hey, it's just an hour. Hey, it's during lunch. Hey, sign up and watch it later. Hey, just share it with someone on your team. These are all ways to reduce the I in their ROI calculation in their brain. These reduce the perceived investment, the perceived commitment. So there are every headline either makes the value sound greater or the investment sound smaller. For example, 10 tips. That number makes the investment sound smaller, sounds scannable, sounds quick to consume. 10 tips for maximizing your click-through rates makes the value sound higher, the return sounds greater. So it's absolutely critical to just always remember that nobody clicks or taps on anything until they've done a split-second ROI calculation in their brain. And the job of the headline author, or in this case, the outreach message, is to keep that context and sort of manipulate the calculation they're doing in their brain by making the R bigger, the I small.
It's funny. It almost always comes down to copywriting and persuasion in any domain.
I don't know. There's no other way, right? It's like if that weren't the case, then like A/B tests on button colors would work.
Right.
They don't. There isn't a button color that's going to perform better. That's not why people click on buttons. Oh, I love orange buttons. I'll click on any orange button. Nobody does that.
The big orange button. I always thought that was the top performer.
There may be some data. I'm sure there's a data set where it works. And I've often recommended, using contrasting colors in your visual hierarchy to make sure the CTA is obvious. But very rare to hear a conclusive A/B test on something like color. Very common to see a conclusive A/B test on something like language, words, verbs. Here's another thing, like when you realize that, go scan every one of your pages and ask, what verbs are you using? Same thing, right? Read, click, and learn are not powerful verbs. You can do better than that. You can work harder than that. CTAs can work harder than that.
When you give the session, I assume you're giving a lot of these sessions, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you give these, do you just fully focus on value, entertainment, education, or do you intertwine some sales pitch into the actual session?
It's not necessary to pitch. If you do, it's kind of like under your breath and aside. It's part of it. Everybody knows where they are and what they're doing. They're at your show. So it's not like you have to separate your message from some other noisy message and stand out. Everything you're doing is demonstrating expertise. So if you say something like, yeah, we reviewed, 100 manufacturing companies' websites, and based on our experience doing website planning on over 1,000 projects, we've learned that there's some things that these sites do that aren't aligned with best practices. Or our team builds and launches 55 websites a year, and based on what I'm seeing in analytics. So it's like very clear that you're the subject matter expert and that, everything you say comes from this context of your experience. So you don't really need to pitch. I'll tell you, this might only be possible in web development, but the sneaky way to get a huge conversion rate at the end is to spend a few minutes at the end of each session reviewing people's websites live for a volunteer. And then afterwards, other people are like, oh, wow, I want that guy to look at our website.
Right.
Now your basic
content strategy too, plugging them into Ahrefs and just saying like, hey, here's how you can improve.
And what is that? What is that basically a sales call?
Right, exactly. Then you're basically on a demo call.
Yep, you're on a demo. They're learning, you're teaching, and if it goes well, they will never take an action in that category without talking to you first because you built the trust.
And then there's probably a certain percentage of people who just reach out naturally, inbound almost after that and say, hey, we want this service. But for the rest, do you do any like follow-up outreach after that? Any sort of sequences or?
Yeah, the follow-up is so different from normal content marketing. So imagine doing a webinar for a broad audience and then at the end saying, hey, I'm happy to do 1 hour of free consulting for anyone who joined this webinar.
Oof.
You can't say that, right?
Overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be suicide. But on an account-based marketing webinar where each person is there because you specifically invited them.
They're all qualified. Yeah.
They're all qualified. So, you're hoping that every single person who attends will take you up on your offer for 1 hour of free consulting. Because that 1 hour is going to be totally focused on their needs. You're going to learn a lot about them. They're going to hear your custom specific, personalized feedback for them. It is extraordinary how how different the close is on those two types of webinars. Like, so I have a book that sells for $22 on Amazon and costs me $10 to print. I'm going to send this book to everybody who attended this webinar. I've got a link anyone can click, to spend an hour, to get on my calendar for an hour. I'm going to send the schedule link to everybody who attended this webinar. The follow-up is really the magic part of it. And budget, you're going to spend 6 hours making the content. You're going to spend 4 hours doing the outreach. You're going to spend an hour on the webinar, and you're going to spend like 8 hours doing follow-up if you're doing it right.
I want to talk about the book in a second, but I want to spin it back a little bit and talk about your agency. So what initially drove you to start a web design and development agency in the first place?
Well, so I'm Gen X, so mid-90s, the internet was taking off, and I thought it was really interesting to see this kind of collision of creative and technical stuff. And I just realized like what's possible now. We didn't even call it UX, but the overlap between creative things and technical things. This sounds awesome. I can use both halves of my brain. It's going to be really challenging. Art plus science. There's types of marketing that are like pure art. It's like logo design. There's nothing technical about that at all. There's parts of marketing that are purely technical. Analytics. there's no creative to that at all. So web design is, you cannot do it without using both halves of your brain intensely. Like you're at like 100% maximum cognitive intensity when you're doing it well. So that just sounded awesome to me. I always wanted to use both halves of my brain at the same time. There wasn't anything else that I was really that interested in. I'd kind of bounced around into different things, but that was, I wanted to do it. And honestly, I had no portfolio for it. This sounds insane, but it's easier to find a client than to find an employer. And if you have no portfolio or background or skills, no employer is going to take a chance on you. It's easier to start a business than to find a job. So that's what I did.
I love that. And then now, like, I've seen you talk about kind of conversion rate optimization, web design best practices, but you've also built a huge personal brand in the content marketing space. So this might be an annoying question. Maybe it's been asked before, but web design development agency, but your personal brand focuses a lot on content marketing. Why'd you choose to do that?
I welcome the question. It's not, I know that you understand, but not everyone does. So here's kind of the basic idea. I want to be top of mind with decision makers who make choices about who to hire for their website. So I need to get to capture their attention. What should my content strategy include? What should I talk about? Something they care about, certainly, right? But if I only talked about the specific service, who would listen? Who would follow? Who would read? It would be, my audience would be 100% web developers.
Practitioners for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that people ask me that question in kind of an irritated way. Like, how come you talk about stuff you don't sell? I want to hire you for this thing you don't do. But talking to you, Alex, I know that you get it, because basically, like, yes, you need to, if you're trying to keep the attention of people who will one day hire you, you need to talk about something that they care about. Content marketing is inherently empathetic. The topics are always sort of adjacent to the main service, at least somewhat. So yeah, what is this? How do I demonstrate expertise to them, keep their attention? Content strategy, SEO, influencer marketing, email marketing, social media, account-based marketing, analytics. Yeah, become relevant for those things. And then, of course, conversion, because that's all these things are relevant to websites.
Super related, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an evolved. So, after 500 articles and a book and, 60 videos and, all this content, people think like, oh, that guy knows a lot about analytics. It's just a content strategy that kept going for 15 years. And yes, we're relevant for analytics, but that was how I became attracted enough links to rank for web design related phrases, and also to be known to decision makers, because it doesn't take long before you click around on the Orbit site, you see where web development.
Well, you mentioned something at the end there that I kind of thought was the case, but like it sounds like a holistic content strategy is going to include a lot of topics that are generally interesting enough so to garner links, because then you can actually rank for the stuff that matters, as opposed to just writing in a smaller niche, maybe having less opportunities to get links from HubSpot, from Unbounce, when you're writing about these different kind of areas. So was that a conscious thing that you thought through, or like how does that
100%. No, and it's rarely discussed. It's like some of the most powerful benefits of content marketing are in fact totally indirect. If you want leads, you need to convert qualified visitors. You want qualified visitors, you got to get your service pages to rank for commercial intent phrases. If you want those pages to rank for those phrases, you've got to have links to your website. If you want to have links to your website, you've got to have things worthy of being linked to. Publish original research on marketing related topics, attract the links, rank for the money phrase, qualified visitor, convert them into lead. We generated 600 leads last year, and we only do 50 projects a year. So if you work backwards from the question, how do I generate qualified leads every day? You're going to end up in probably a similar spot as I am.
Right.
You need all these ingredients.
I mean, I think it's also like a question of like scale too. We use this model called the barbell strategy. And one, I guess, thesis of mine is that content marketing should be a revenue generating channel. Not always a popular thing, oddly enough.
Cool.
But to become a revenue channel, it's like you need to rank for those product pages, and maybe not product pages, but product led content, right? It could be listicles, it could be case studies, it could be like whatever is going to, be at the bottom of the funnel. But that stuff, generally speaking, you need a pretty high domain rating, big, website authority to do that. So then we call the other bucket buzzworthy content. And it's sort of this catch-all term. It's just stuff that generates buzz. So it could be socially viral content. It could be backlink generating content, link bait stuff. But generally speaking, it's going to be stuff that's more interesting, entertaining, etc. And early on in a company, you really index heavily on that because you don't have the links, you don't have the authority. And then once you're HubSpot stage, once you're at the top of that hierarchy, I mean, you should still probably do some interesting stuff to keep relevant, but you could almost just print money with product-led content. But in the beginning, it's like that strategy just doesn't work for most companies.
It's true. There's a flywheel that gets moving through, search, social, and email are powered by links, followers, and subscribers. Those are the three KPIs for those three channels. Search, social, and email are driven by links, followers, and subscribers. So how do you do that? Why would anyone link or follow or subscribe? But when you have those things in place, especially links in that example you gave, then everything else becomes easy. You've got there's horsepower there that you can leverage to attract qualified visitors by making a super detailed, keyword focused product page. Having said, so yes, I agree, and we're all totally on the same page with the value of what some people just call top of funnel content, or I like the way you called it buzz. But it's also worth mentioning that any young content program can get immediate value by writing super targeted sales enablement content. Like we were talking about account-based marketing stuff. That account-based stuff, you don't need any links or followers or shares, right? You just need an active network. Account-based marketing, again, page views are relevant. The number of registrants is far less important. And you don't need to have a big body of work or a lot of subscribers or a high domain rating to win in that channel. I also just like writing things sometimes that answer sales questions straight up. It's like, I've got an article called like a B2B service page, like the anatomy of the perfect B2B service page. And it's got a diagram in it that shows these are the 13 things that should be on every B2B service page. And when I'm in sales meetings, I'm sharing a screen. I pull that up. I show my diagram next to their webpage side by side. It's an article, but it sells our services. They see that, they compare it to their page, they learn 10 things that nobody else told them, and they go shred the other proposals and they hire us. I don't know if that happens, but I'm making it sound like it's amazing. And then the checks start filing. No, it's not that easy. But our costs we're more expensive than most of our competitors. But we generate more leads and we have a high sales closing rate. And we do it partly through just demonstrating tons of expertise and trust during the calls. And content can support that. Just pull it up while you're talking to them. Share your screen and you're the page view, but they're seeing it through Zoom. Sounds funny.
Well, it sounds like you've got some emerging, I guess, novel ideas on content marketing that maybe weren't there 5 years ago. The ABM stuff sounds relatively new. So how would you describe your content approach today? Like what's the, driving thesis behind Orbit's blog and your content strategy? And how has that changed since you maybe began doing content marketing?
Well, in the early days, I did not do any kind of influencer collaboration. Now I almost never publish an article without a quote from at least some expert. In the early days, I knew that I was mostly just publishing. It was like a blog and a newsletter. But I quickly realized that I could build more trust by doing in-person events. Presentations, having to give a monthly presentation pushed me harder into quality, because I knew that these same people were coming to my monthly event every month, and I had to have something new. So the repurposing has gotten better.
Monthly event, sorry to interrupt. Was that something you hosted, or was that just like you were looking for conferences to speak at, like a CXL Live or something?
I do. So before I spoke much at conferences at all, I knew that I could build more trust if I could and we were mostly just Chicago focused then. Now we work with more places and more people in different places. But trust is, so text is weak. Diagrams are better. Video is much better, but the ultimate is live and in person. So if I could fill a room, and it was that conference room over there, with 25 people, and 5 of them are current clients, and 10 of them are friends, and 5 of them are prospects, and just a mix of all these different people, and get them all together, and to stand in front and teach an interesting, important, valuable, relevant, useful thing once a month for 40 minutes, and they get to network with each other. They make friends. I've hired people from that event, but it's called Wine and Web. And this is year 11. I've been doing it forever. And now it's just a virtual.
You do these
every month. Yeah.
Wow.
For the last 2 years, it's been bi-week. It's been twice a month, which was more than necessary. We're going back to once a month. Now that it's virtual, it's really, really easy to do. But no, I did. I gave, I don't know, 100 presentations. And that's also reps. It's practice. If you're going to, I've never spoke at CXL Live, but if you're going to go give a presentation somewhere and to a big room, that you better have given it before.
Yeah, you want to make sure your chops are down first.
Yeah. Do you ever see I watched one last night. It was like a comedian, like a Netflix special. Those people try those jokes and perfect their timing in little rooms all over the country before they get on that big stage.
Yeah, man. Dave
same thing.
Will just randomly show up at a club in New York and do a set without telling anybody and just try out new jokes, right? Like that's how he gets to those big, Netflix things. Yeah,
because you're not ready. He knows he's not ready. He has to do that. So it's the same thing. So I, for many years, and I still mostly do, say yes to every invitation. Hey, want to speak to my class? Yes, I'll be there. And then right before you go, you got to polish these slides a little bit. What works last time? Can I make this more concise? Can I add this new idea? So I have probably 12 highly polished presentations, any of which would score very high at any conference. I improve them all every time. So next week I'm presenting at Search Love in San Diego. And it's a evolution of a presentation I've given over and over. But what if the same people are there? Got to make it better. What if do I have better data now? Is there, this part was kind of slow. Okay, can I add a joke slide over here? How about a ta-da conclusion? Let's make this more. So yeah, so that was always a part of our content strategy. Not always, but from the early days, the presentation thing. And it's just, COVID made it harder, but it's just, there's no better way to build credibility than to be in person, face to face with someone. And the connection just feels stronger for longer, I think.
We'll get back to the holistic content strategy, but first on the speaking, I saw you speak at CTA conference, I believe, in Vancouver, and you were a strong speaker. So at that point, you'd been doing it for 10 years, something like that. And obviously the reps help, but did you consciously try to improve your speaking skills through any means? Like, did you read books? Did you go to Toastmasters? How did you become a powerful speaker?
Well, thanks for saying that. I'm not. I'm always nervous and hoping to improve. So I'm not, thinking that I'm at a level now. I'm always, I'm nervous about the presentations next week. I have 2, but let's see. I took an architectural tour once. Chicago's like an architecture museum. We have so many fantastic examples of every style of building. And I realized volunteers are giving these tours. So I signed up, took the training, and became a volunteer tour guide for the Chicago Architecture Center. It was called the Architecture Foundation before. And so for 8 years, 20 times a year, I gave an architectural walking tour to random tourists. Before that, I lived in China, and my job was to teach English to very large rooms, like 100 plus students, on all different topics, speaking and listening skills, culture, American movies. And so I was standing in front of rooms with a microphone then. So before that, I was in college. I got a degree in Mandarin, and I studied teaching. I got a certificate to teach. So I was already learning like curriculum development and creating lesson plans and, learning outcomes and pedagogy. So probably it's just practice. I remember being terrified to speak when I was a little kid, have to give a presentation in class. But the people who want to get better should be open to any opportunity to speak to any room. I have friends who are like, I won't go unless they give me money. Okay. But guess what? This was pre-COVID. I was given 100 presentations a year, and they were given like 8. Wow. Yeah.
That architecture thing is brilliant. I love that idea. This is a massive diversion, but architecture-wise, Chicago versus New York, which is superior? And if it's Chicago, why do you think that?
Well, it's definitely Chicago in terms of percentage of buildings that are significant. Mm-hmm. New York has a lot of really boring architecture. There are some amazing gems, but block by block, you can walk down a street in Chicago and see the history of skyscrapers in 6 blocks with incredible standout examples of every evolution in the styles all that during that time. This skyscraper was invented in Chicago. Chicago has a fantastic example. Like all of the greats have worked here. Some of the best architecture in New York was done by Chicagoans. Flatiron Building, Daniel Burnham, go down the list. But actually, what's more interesting, I think, is that, and I love the question, I love your ask, the zoning laws created a style of building in Chicago that would go up to like 64 feet. And then they had a big setback. A lot of buildings look like kind of a giant chair, like huge wings, and then a tall central tower. In New York, the zoning laws were you couldn't go past an imaginary line that went out from an angle in the center of the street. So there's tons of tiny setbacks, like little wedding cakes.
Yeah.
Zoning laws determined the shape of the skyline in Chicago and in New York. They looked very different because nothing to do with structural engineering or, foundations or water or weather. It's about laws. Really interesting.
Are those laws related to the Chicago fires?
No, Chicago fire laws determine like building materials. The laws were at the time there was a fear. This is so fun. At the time there was a fear that of canyons and that there would be no light or air at street level, because this was an era when there were, going back, there were still horses, and everything was burning coal everywhere, and cities were dirty and smelly and dark, and just there was a concern about fresh air. This was prior to air conditioning and fluorescent lighting and high-speed elevators. So the shape of technology was also a huge driver, not just zoning laws, but people were worried about cities just being these like super deep, dark canyons, smoky canyons, and so that's why they forced builders to put setbacks in.
This is cool. Okay. So this plus the book plus the blogging, all of this stuff together leads me to believe that there's something in you that just loves teaching. I do.
Yeah, I think it's the best. What's better than like learning something useful and teaching it?
What about teaching drives you? What do you think what do you think is so compelling about that?
It's just intrinsically rewarding. I mean, what else are we doing here? Is it, are we just purely financially motivated? Is it growth for its own sake? Is it about a number somewhere in analytics or in a bank? If you want to make a difference, and marketing can make a difference, business can be a force for good, then you should be, paying attention to the people that you're reaching and the difference that you're making for them. Hopefully, I would hope that the best of us on our best days are trying to help someone be a better version of themselves, or at least do a better job in their day. If you can do that and stay in business. You don't have to get rich. If you can do that, you're going to be remembered. People care. You're going to, and by the way, business will be much easier because, word of mouth will spread and people will say, that's someone you could talk to. Yeah, he'll take your call. He'd probably love to help you. That's part of just being a good human. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, something I noticed subtly is like, all the stuff around keywords and like you're, very SEO driven in terms of the blog, backlinks and all that stuff. But mostly what you've talked about is actually like getting close to the customer or close to the prospects, right? You talked about like these small group wine and web sessions.
Yeah.
You talked about even like the original research. You talked about reaching the right types of people. So I found that to be interesting. There's a lot of people when they talk about SEO or thought leadership or whatever type of content, they're talking about broadcasting and you're talking about kind of interactions.
Well, it may be, so that might be partly the function that I'm a B2B marketer and we sell stuff that's like $100,000 and we need a lot of trust and we don't need millions of those people. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I'm in a category that is relatively low volume and relatively high value means that I can be more intensely focused on relationship building. Is another way to put it. There are other types of businesses where they're focused on higher value of lower or higher volume of lower value. So whoever made this microphone, they need to sell a lot of these microphones.
Right. Or if you're selling cereal, you can't get on a sales call with each person buying a bowl of
right.
cereal.
Yeah. So I think that's partly like the B2B, high consideration offer for a service company. But I'd be teaching anyway, even if I was selling microphones, I think.
Doing YouTube videos on it or something.
I probably would be I'd be all over YouTube for sure.
So you talked about influencers a little bit back around, you didn't always include influencers in your content, but now it's rare that you publish a blog post without an influencer quote. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. It's also a good day when you learn by reading from your own content. And one way to do that is to just include other people in the process. So, I'm writing an article about, click-through rates are lower and there are, search engine results pages have more features in them. And, it's harder to get, you might rank number one, but ranking number one is farther down the page. Hey, Will Cricklow has been watching this industry for years. Will, would you mind sharing a few thoughts? His insights were fascinating. It went beyond search. He's talking about what's the best way to check Google? Is it with regulation? No, I'm hoping a competitor will emerge. I keep thinking about what Will said. Where did that come from? An email he sent to me for a contributor quote. Super interesting. Or someone else that I was just talking to about the same, this woman, Catherine, was saying that, click-through rates are lower from Google generally, but not as much for B2B phrases. I'm like, really? You know what? I think you're probably right about that. So I'm thinking about it, right? So this is me, this kind of a side benefit, but totally selfish. I learn by creating content and reaching out to these experts. So that's a good day. So your content, so you're going to learn by reading your own content, by creating content. You're going to get higher quality content, period. You're going to get better social reach because these people are very likely to share. And you're going to grow your network, which, by the way, both Catherine and Will write for high domain authority blogs. Mm-hmm. And they may mention that on their sites, that piece on their sites. So we say an ally in creating content is an ally in promoting content. I also say that content is not optimized for social media unless it includes contributors. Mm-hmm.
Do you know who you're going to reach out to ahead of time just based on who you follow in those niches? Or do you, I know I should have an intake form, like a Haro of sorts that they run themselves where it's hey, if you want to contribute to our content, sign up here and we'll email you when there's opportunities. Or is it more so handpicked for you?
I'm not very rigorous about it, and I should be. And I've seen those methods you've described. It's pretty opportunistic. So in that case, I mentioned I'm going to Search Love, and I was on a call with Will, and I'm like, hey, do you got a second? Actually, we wrapped up the call, and I'm like, I'm doing this thing. Can you take a look? What do you think? Can you send a quote? He'd share it. He did. So it was just I just happened to be talking to him. Mm-hmm. But the fact that now we have collaborated on something brings us closer together. I mean, I'm grateful his face is in my, on my website now in that blog post. And I think, it's a stronger connection now because we made something together. But no, I kind of suck at that. It's really just who am I talking to today? I actually had an idea a minute ago to ask you about this next article I'm writing. Remind me, I might need your help.
I'm happy to give a quote for sure.
Sounds good.
I'm not methodical about this stuff at all either, but when I worked at CXL, I had like kind of a mental list of people that I would reach out to for articles, and literally the same as you described. Like I learned so much from those people when I would read about, how do you run multiple competing experiments on a page. Would reach out to data scientists, and they had differing viewpoints, and I would have to hash through those and kind of journalistically piece it together. And I would always end up coming out of that article with a new understanding of the topic myself. So I thought that was fascinating. But yeah, I've never done the Haro style thing. I think that could be an interesting way if you're doing it at scale for a content program, but mine's always been kind of manual one-on-one.
Mine too.
I do think there's something interesting too. You said kind of getting closer to these people, just generally speaking, right? About Will. Something we've been using as a phrase internally is like our omniscient universe, and gravitationally pulling people into our universe. Mm-hmm. That could be blog traffic, that could be customers and clients, that could be employees, but it also could just be like friends of the firm, right? Mm-hmm. Now they know us. Now when somebody that they're talking to is like, we need a content marketing agency, they're like, oh, you should talk to Alex. Mm-hmm. So we think about that on like a very, very like one-on-one, manual basis of like, how can we pull more people into this universe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I think somehow I think it's slower than it should be sometimes. So I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Jeff Coyle who has a tool called Market Muse that makes on-page SEO recommendations, and I love it. Once I realized what this tool did and how to use it, I got really excited about it, and I'm using it all the time. But I probably talked to that guy for like 4 years before I realized what his tool does. I feel bad. I mean, I missed out by not using it sooner. I don't know if you can hear that. There's noise in the background.
No, it's not too bad.
So it sounds like a snowblower.
Well, Zoom is amazing.
That's good. So I think that yes, there's a place for sales, and there's a place for awareness, and there's a place for the pitch, and it's just a few sentences. So any call that you're on with anybody, be like, hey, I'm Andy. Yeah, I'm happy to help you with SEO, and I'm going to enjoy this call, and let's record it because maybe something here will be useful to you. And of course, you probably know, by the way, we build websites. And if you or anyone needs help with a B2B lead gen site, we're total pros at this. Don't hesitate to reach out. Just it's like forgetting to give someone your business card, which we don't give business cards. That'd be a tough business to be in today. but yeah, I think
put the feelers out.
Pulling people toward you, like you said, like getting them in your universe is going to, having them nearby is good, but let's all remember to be specific and explicit and take a minute to tell people at least what business they're in and let them know, because a lot of times you're adding a ton of value. They want to reciprocate, but if they don't even know what you do, then they're not going to be able to ever make a good introduction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Switching it up a little bit, I want to kind of cross the streams here in terms of the web design and development and CRO UX side of things and the content side. So what have you learned, or what advice could you give in terms of converting blog readers, right? You get a bunch of traffic. Like, how do you set up CTAs? How do you design the blog? Like, I guess, like, what can I learn from web design and development to help me facilitate better ROI when it comes to blogging?
Yeah. So I sort of concede the fact up front that blog readers are very unlikely to need our services. And so I'm just going to start from the point of almost the ideal outcome from the blog reader is that they will subscribe. My goal for the visitor to the blog is that they leave their email address before they go. The traffic probably came from search, and my big hope is that they'll subscribe to email, and then I can contact them directly without needing, Google in between. I'm trying to email marketing is disintermediation. You can reach that person directly. No more big tech or giant companies in between. So the key to converting visitors into subscribers is to create email signup forms that have the 3 Ps, we call it: prominence, promise, and proof. So prominence is that it stands out. It's high on the visual hierarchy. So it's a contrasting color, it's big, there's white space around it, or it's in the footer on every page, or it's a pop-up window, or it's a sticky footer. There's something about this CTA to subscribe that is visually obvious. That's the first P. It's prominent. Promise is, and it should be very specific about what they're going to get. Email sign up submit is a crappy CTA. It's not a CTA. It doesn't tell them anything. Or sign up for updates.
Get notified.
Be the first to know. Yeah. Get notified, news and tip, like it doesn't say anything. So go back to your content strategy and ask yourself what you're sharing, and then make that the CTA. The very top of our blog says practical advice for content analytics and web design. So that's the promise. Make a strong promise. If you're not making a promise, don't expect anybody to subscribe. I think it's around 15 subscribers a day leave their email address on our website. I am humbled by that number. The third P is proof. Show that you're legit. Give them some reason to believe. It's where we started this conversation about social proof. Mm-hmm. So for example, like the number of subscribers. Join the 20,000 people who get biweekly web marketing tips, or get web marketing tips. And you got a quote from someone. Brian Dean did this for years. He had like a Neil Patel quote under his email sign-up form. So, I saw Detailed did this. They have like logos of companies that they work with or something like, get for free the insights that these people charge for or something like that. It's very clever. So yeah, if you don't have the 3 Ps on your email sign-up form, it's not prominent, means visitors are less likely to even see it. No promise. Why would they do it? It would be weird if they subscribed. And no proof, you're really just making another unsupported marketing claim. So email sign-up forms that have the 3 Ps convert at much, much higher rates. Also, it's a bit of clever analytics work, but if you can figure out which of your posts are people are subscribing to the most, like people who read this article are more likely to subscribe. Mm-hmm. In other words, look at the reverse goal path report in your analytics and divide the total subscribers who looked at that post from the total unique page views to that post. You can actually calculate the conversion rate from visitor to subscriber for each of your articles. That is awesome data, because now you know exactly which post to put into heavy social rotation or what to work harder to promote or what to link back to from something else. That's another way to, just put your best cheese on your best mousetraps, we used to say, something like that.
You don't go for lead magnets or gated content or anything like that to get people on the email list. It's more so just here's what we're selling. Here's the information you get on the email. It's just more straightforward than, download this guide to lead generation or something like that.
Never used a pop-up, never gated a piece of content, but I don't know. I probably should.
Well, it's a lot of work, right? Maybe it's marginal. So maybe worth a test, but I feel like if you're getting enough email signups with just the regular form and you can scale that out universally, as opposed to like, you've got 1,000 blog posts, how many ebooks are you going to create for each one? Like,
yeah,
is it going to be one for each or one for every 10? So I think that includes a lot more management questions, which introduces complexity.
You're right. It probably is a lot of work. I've never even tried. I mean, no one really says that. How much work is it to set up a lead magnet? I have no idea.
I created one for my personal blog, and I actually haven't looked, but I do have an A/B test running in Opt-in Monster, where one is just straightforward selling the email list, and the other has it was like 12 content tactics or something like that I wrote. So I don't know. I probably shouldn't have mentioned that without giving the data. So next, maybe I'll update that.
You're testing it
into this podcast, but yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, you're doing it right. You invested the time, and you didn't just go with one assumption. You created 2 hypotheses, and you're testing them. So hopefully, if I ever try it, I'll do it the way you're doing it.
Totally. Contrarian question on content. What's something that you believe to be true about content marketing that many people would disagree with you about?
Boy, that's a fun question. I think that social is a pretty crappy source of traffic.
Okay.
I could show you screenshots of famous accounts that have shared our articles, and it's like, this account has 1 million followers, and then in the next screenshot I show you the analytics, and it's like 60 clicks. Mm-hmm. Literally 1 million. An account with 1 million followers shares an article of yours. You might get 60 clicks, maybe 100 clicks, something like that. So people really overvalue social media metrics. I think that there's actually an inverse correlation between the visibility of a metric and its importance. Okay. Social followers, super visible, not very important. Conversion rate per blog post from visitor to subscriber, super valuable, but very hard to calculate.
People who share your articles on Slack or something like that, which you can't even find.
Yeah, dark social. Yeah, like that kind of stuff. So but that's probably a more targeted audience. Someone sharing your article on Slack is going to get a lot more traffic than like another tweet. So I think that click-through rates from search and social are both lower than people think, and they're declining. I think So to me, what social media's biggest benefit is not dumping links. Even though I have co-schedules set up to send to share articles that I've written over the years, and that yes, I'm doing automation, social sharing automation. But what I love about social is networking. It's about the interactions that lead to conversations like this one. It's about the research that finds people who are going to be much more relevant, much more targeted for your audience, like we described in the ABM thing. So at least for this perspective, from one B2B lead gen marketer, I very much prioritize the interpersonal relationship building networking aspect of social media over social media as a dumping ground for links.
I think that's valid. And I think it's an underrated aspect of especially Twitter. There's there's dumping your links and trying to get traffic back to your blog, which I agree. I think even if Tim Ferriss tweets your article, you're probably not going to get that much traffic.
Not that much. You'd be surprised. I agree. Yeah.
And then the networking I think that's underrated. But then there's this kind of in-between part where people try to build native followings on those, Twitter, especially LinkedIn. I think like becoming a LinkedIn thought leader is something, I'm trying to do. So what do you think about those kind of use cases for social, or is that something y'all have explored or not explored yet?
Well, there's something magical happening on LinkedIn. It's probably not too late, but the LinkedIn newsletter is amazing.
I don't know what that is.
Well, I think everyone has it now. It's like creator mode, or anybody who's active on LinkedIn has a creator mode thing. But if you go to click to create an article, and while you're in the editor to post an article directly into LinkedIn, literally building on rented land. We always said don't build on rented land, but I'm talking about building on rented land. So you click to post. You don't make a post, you make an article. You're looking at the editor, chance to put in a headline and an image. But if you see a button on the top right that says start newsletter, then you are creating articles within LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is going to promote this newsletter to people that thinks might like it. If they opt in, it's going to email them when you post articles. LinkedIn is sending gazillions of emails per day now as people create articles, as people create LinkedIn newsletters. So literally like 1 year ago, I started this LinkedIn newsletter, 14 months ago. We have 125,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't do anything.
Purpose stuff there, or it's not like completely original, I'm sure.
It's all repurposed. Well, for the first 6 months, it was all repurposed.
Right.
Now, every other one is repurposed. So I write a new article. It's going to go out in the LinkedIn newsletter, but also, my newsletter is biweekly. The LinkedIn newsletter is weekly. So every other article is me just pulling out something that I wrote years ago sometimes. Freshen it up, make sure it looks good, maybe change the headline. But that is the thought leadership is sort of easier now than it was, as long as you have that option to click to start a newsletter. Highly recommended. It is the lowest effort, greatest reach thing that I've ever done in content. And a lot of these posts, I don't know, the one from yesterday, these are like, 250 reactions, 50 comments, 40,000 views. Like, what? Where does this? Yeah.
And it's mainly stuff you've already written, just had to repurpose. I mean, now you're doing some new stuff there, but
syndication,
low-hanging fruit.
It's called syndication. It's not duplicate. There's no duplicate content penalty. Do it fearlessly. It's going to reach a new audience. Even if someone saw it 3 years ago, they won't remember. It's going to feel fresh and new. But here's another counterintuitive thing that people get kind of angry when I recommend. It works best if you don't put a date on your blog. Mm-hmm. I think blog posts should not have dates on them. I know that Pep does this. He has like date written, date updated.
And then updated,
which is nice. But unless you're publishing original research, in which case you can put the date in the title, you can put it in the body text, you can put it all over the place. But I don't like when I prefer, and we build lots of blogs, to have a blog template that doesn't automatically date stamp that thing like in the template.
Because you think maybe only negative signals can come from that. If something's written in 2017 but still valuable, why would it be either deprioritized by Google or the reader who clicks there?
It just looks older faster. You're just making your stuff look older faster. I don't think it's a great idea. So it's people. It only makes sense if you publish evergreen content. So this doesn't work if your strategy is to publish news, right, which is generally a bad idea anyway. I don't think news makes a great content strategy.
That used to be the way, though. I feel like the old days of content, it was all like, all right, we've got to become like a news publication. Then everyone's like, all right, we got to switch to some SEO, some evergreen stuff. Now I feel like it's almost coming back. like the news thing a little bit. Like some companies are trying to push that.
Even news companies have struggled to produce news profitably. Like there is no
like an expensive hamster wheel for sure.
Yeah. I mean, how can you, like, what do you really publish that's like legit news? A lot of people put that in their CTA, like sign up for news. Like you're not actually publishing news. News gets old fast. News virtually has no opportunity in search. Do you want to align your article, your news piece with a keyword that you think people are searching for? Some things take months to start ranking. News isn't going to work that way. People don't really search for news. People scan for news. News is part of a stream. So no, don't publish news. It ruins your SEO opportunities, and don't publish and don't put a date on your articles if you can help it. Keep your template clean. Put a human face, put the author's face, and good CTAs. But I don't recommend putting date stamping your content.
Love it. What's something you've changed your mind about regarding content marketing?
Well, that building on rented land, I've totally done a 180 on that. It's like COVID hits. I'm not traveling around giving presentations. I am going to put these things on YouTube. Great. Now I'm building on rented land, right? I always said, don't do that. Totally doing that. Well, I've got these old articles. I can just syndicate them easily on LinkedIn. Literally have a VA built a LinkedIn newsletter with 100K subscribers. Okay, I'm going to do that. Fine. So those are ways where I've totally backpedaled on that don't build on rented land thing, because now LinkedIn and YouTube, both great channels for me.
There's something to be said for where the attention is too, right? Or at least where your target market's attention is. And I do find like, I love putting time and attention into a blog post, and I still think there's tons of value in that. But sometimes I'll spend 20 minutes on a tweet or LinkedIn post and I'll see the views and I'm like, all right, there's definitely something to this. I'm not going to bank the whole strategy on this, but if I can get some trust, if I can connect with some people here, it's probably worth putting that effort in.
Yeah. That's, generally speaking, the things that get me 100x results are the things that take me 10x efforts. And I think of that as efficiency. I am frequently looking for the 10x efforts that will get 100x results. I don't try to cut corners on writing things. I don't outsource, content development. I work very hard on images. Half the time I spend on my articles, I'm prepping visuals. I'm putting in big effort on a lot of these things, not because I have a bunch of time, but because I'm busy. I just know that the most efficient way to do marketing is to create something that's like in that top 1% of quality, or it exceeds the visitor's expectations for quality. Those are the ones that will give you 100x results. I think it's much more work in the long run to publish a lot of like medium quality stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Tim Ferriss wrote about this in the 4-Hour Work Week, had some quote around like the best fishing is where the fewest people go. So it's like, if you just aim higher, there's fewer people doing that. So you're almost creating like a higher barrier to entry to compete with you.
Right.
Because few people are willing to put in that effort in the first place. So you're competing with so many fewer people at that level.
Original research you mentioned, account-based marketing we mentioned, video. A lot of these things, it's like, if I'm serious about trying to drive traffic to something, yeah, I could just make a social post for it. But if it's like an account, like for that account-based marketing thing, the landing page, if you click on one of those messages that I sent to those people we talked about earlier, the landing page has a video of me giving a 1-minute commercial for this presentation I'm going to give. And I shoot that in Camtasia. I've got a light, I've got a pro camera. I'm using software to type in. I personally and manually type in the captions because they might not have their sound on. So I'll spend like 20, 30 minutes making a video, a 1-minute commercial, basically, of me pitching this thing that I'm promoting. So why would I spend 20 minutes on basically like a social media post? It's because that's 10 times the effort, but it's 100 times the results. I think that's frequently true. There's many things I've found in content that are 10x efforts, but get you 100x results.
That's awesome. I love that model. And that's how a strategist thinks. Like you're indexing on the edge that's exploitable, and you can build a moat on, right? Not doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, but slightly worse. That's a bad strategy.
That would be, someone should make like a joke podcast. Isn't April 1st coming up? We should just do what everyone else does, but do it a little bit worse.
Yeah,
I love it.
Do you want to switch up and do some, I call them rapid fire questions, but they're really just kind of random non-content, non-marketing related things.
Sounds good. You want really short answers?
You can give short or long answers. It doesn't matter too much because there's some that you might have to think a little bit more on, and it's nice to explain. So just, take each one as it comes and let me know how you want to respond.
Yep, sounds good.
First one, I didn't write this down, but I'm kind of spitballing here. What's the true Chicago deep dish pizza, and why would you say it's Pequod's?
Pequod's.
Yeah.
The true Chicago deep dish pizza is Lou Malnati's pizza. I grew up on it.
Yeah.
You like Lou's?
Yeah.
Pequod's. Yeah. People love Pequod's. That's so funny. No one knows. I mean, that's a really specific niche thing. There aren't there's only one Pequod's, right?
I think there might be two now, but they're packed. I think the stands out.
People love that. Pequod's is good. It's a heavy layer of cheese. Mm-hmm. Lou Malnati's, I think, nails the ratios. They've got the crust is great. And depending what you get on there, I'm going to recommend garlic and giardiniera as two super, 10x pizza toppings. These are tough.
It's a very Chicago pizza.
And Lou's is a client. We built their site. I'm super proud of it.
That's cool.
But I grew up on Lou Malnati's.
They've got a great salad too, which is not something you would think when you go to a pizza place, but it's phenomenal.
That's interesting. You don't hear that much.
Who do you admire professionally and why?
One of my favorite answers, a classic answer for me, is Mark Schaefer. Mark just puts huge value on relationships. He's very, very accessible. He does things like, hey, I'm spending the entire day talking to my blog readers. Sign up here and just go back to back, talk to 30 people in a day. Help anybody, however he can. He's also prescient. The guy sees things that are coming up. It's really interesting to watch Mark and to see what he's following because he was correct about a lot of things. I think he was talking about influencer marketing 3 years before anybody else. So honored to call him a friend, and that's the guy that we should all be watching closely.
If you could create your own category in Jeopardy, what would it be? And would you get every question right?
I am deep in a long series of audiobooks about ancient history, like late Bronze Age history. Very random, I know. Okay. I know very little about it, except for what I've heard in these books. But I find that just so interesting. What was it like? Just trying to imagine. It's also kind of reassuring to be in a really chaotic, high-speed world now and just imagine 1000 BC. That's a Jeopardy category that I'd totally be into right now.
All right, 2 follow-up questions. So can you recommend one book that you've read from that category?
Well, actually, they're not necessarily just books, but great courses. Uh-huh. So COVID started. I realized I was going to have more time. So I decided to do a tour, a history, like nonfiction history books, starting with the Big Bang up to the present day. So I just listened to books from all these different eras. But some of them, and the one about, it's not late antiquity. What is it? It's we wanted the ancient history, great courses. You can get them on Audible. It's amazing professors. Talk about people who've got the reps. These people have taught these courses for decades, and they have just incredible ways to explain things. So anything by great courses, and it's the ancient history ones that I liked a lot. Also, the American history ones were fantastic.
That's cool. So the second question is, and you may have answered this a little bit, but when we did office hours, I remember I always asked what books people are reading, and you were reading something on, I think it was Chicago specific, but it was definitely Midwest, and it was about the history of the trees and horticulture there. Mm-hmm. So how do you find these interests? How do you go down these rabbit holes? Because you don't hear, ancient history to Midwestern culture.
It's random.
How do you?
I don't know.
Things pop on your radar.
I don't know. It's that one thing of just going through all the history and then coming back and then finishing it, the survey of all history up till present day, and then going back to, finding myself going back to Bronze Age stuff. I don't know why. It's so, the history of science I thought was really interesting, who made what discoveries and inventions at which times and what was the context back then. I didn't know anything about, Darwin and Lincoln. And it was just all totally fascinating, but the environment is my big topic, actually. So plants and trees and the ecology of the Great Lakes region. I'm an environmental alarmist. That's my actual personal hot button issue and my values. So I've done a lot of reading about the environment because I'm very concerned about it. I was a scuba diver for years. Most of the reefs that I dove are kind of gone now. It's a problem. There's a lot of problems, but this is a big problem, and it's one that I pay close attention to.
There was a document. So I started scuba diving last year, and there was a documentary that I saw. I love it. I'm addicted now, but
it's amazing.
I saw this documentary that made me tear up. It was so horrifying. It was about the reefs, and they showed just 20 years ago to today, and how they've been bleached and destroyed. And it was just like remarkable when you saw the side by side. Insane.
Yeah. There's Chasing Ice was the one about the glaciers, and then I think Chasing Reefs was a follow-up. Might have been that one that you saw.
Yeah, I think that was
yeah. It's a catastrophe. Since we're on the topic, some people believe that the era that we're in now is the Anthropocene. This is the human era, where the ability of any species to survive is partly a function of how well it survives us. If that's a useful species to us, or it's a species that we can ignore and it can survive without, it's the success of any species today is largely in the context of its, potential utility, or is it in the way of humanity?
It's a wild way to look at things, and I think it's probably valid. Yeah.
Mass extinction era. Sorry to say, but anyway.
Well, one follow-up here. Have you read The Overstory?
Yes. I didn't finish it. It's my dad took it back. He lent it to me and then took it back. But that it was really compelling. A lot of the science in there I was already kind of aware of, but beautifully structured. That was I only got about halfway through it.
It kind of tricks you because you start by thinking it's about these vignettes of these people, and then it ends up being about the trees. And it's like, I remember reading that, and then the next week or two, like all I could think about on my walks was just looking at the trees and like the, ornate small details of them.
I want to plant 20 trees a year. I think I can reduce my carbon footprint to 0 if I can plant enough trees, even if I travel. So I planted 8 trees last year, but I'm getting much more serious about this as a volunteer, or literally like doing outreach to people and like putting trees in their yards. I plant trees like by the train tracks over there. I just stuck trees in the ground, mulching and watering trees from my bike, hauling around buckets of water on a bike trailer and watering these trees I put in the ground. So I'm all about it.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad we went down this rabbit hole. Which talent would you most like to have?
Oh, foreign languages was a passion, and if I could, it just opens doors. It breaks down barriers. It teaches you about your own language. So I really regret not learning Spanish. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned my degree in college was Mandarin, which I loved. But I teach a class in Spain every year, and I still don't speak Spanish. So if I had a magic wand and could add one skill to my tool set, it would be Spanish.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I never get this turned back on me. So a lot of people have said singing, and I actually think that would be one of mine that I would pick, because I'm really interested in music. I've got the guitars on my wall back there. Mm-hmm. You can practice and get very good at guitar. Maybe not Hendrix level. There's a certain natural talent to that. You can take voice lessons and maximize what you've got, but there's a certain genetic limitation, right? Like I could take all the lessons and all the practice in the world, and I would never sing like Freddie Mercury or Adele, So
I know.
Magic wand, that would probably be what I would pick because of the inherent limitations with it. But I would also love to play the piano.
That would be my number one. But voice, that's great. What a great choice. I love it.
Yeah. I think painting would also be interesting, but I do think the voice would be, I think I'd pick that one.
Good one.
I think you answered this kind of, but do you consider yourself more artistic or scientific?
I think I would have said artistic years past, but now just in marketing and, as an analytics professional and just in conversation, I'm always kind of making the case for data driven decisions and more science. So I probably come off more of a science-driven mind and have conditioned myself to skew that direction just in my professional life. But going back to like that original motivation, it's the overlap that's the fun part. Mm-hmm. Art plus science. That is really the cool. That's when your brain stays young. That's when you're super engaged. That's when you're going to get the best results. I mean, think of it this way. The data-driven marketer who only uses analytics for insights never has data on things they've never tried. Mm-hmm. We should all be injecting creativity and chaos into our data sets all the time to see what pops out. So do something weird. Write a headline that doesn't make sense. Write an article that's on the very edge of your content strategy. These are try something that you've never tried before. So data is more about optimization and getting ever better, incremental improvement. But what about discovery? What about inspiration? What about something new? Think back to when you first started in content, and you'll remember that it was mostly like an entrepreneurial moment. Mm-hmm. You just decided to take a chance on something. Keep doing that. That's kind of the artistic drive. And I think that's there's some risk that we forget that and that we miss out on that. But it's still right there as an opportunity every day.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I've always been very like left brain numbers, like data driven. And it was this book, Alchemy, by Rory Sutherland, that kind of opened my mind. He's got like 10 tenets, and he's basically making the case through the book to be more irrational. And saying like rationality has its limits, right? You can optimize the speed of a train, or you could make the train's experience better and make people want to spend more time on it, right? You could have free food and models, and like whatever else, like, to your heart's content. And that really, I started thinking about things that way. I'm like, how would I do a landing page if it was totally different? Like, it would start flipping things upside down and thinking outside the box. And yeah, I think the blend of the two is the best. But yeah, I definitely over-indexed on the data driven earlier in my career.
Yeah, I love that. So in that tiny example, you challenge the assumption. Oh, the assumption is that we need to get there sooner. Trains go faster. Trains are unpleasant. I want to get off the train. So the creative moment there, I think, that's a great example, because you challenge the premise. Mm-hmm. Change the goal from getting off the train to enjoying the train. And I think that's
stuff too in that book. He talks about like this. The constant inclination to make drinks taste better. And he gives the counterexample of Red Bull, and they deliberately made it taste not great, because that in your brain says, oh, this must be powerful. This must be working. Because it tastes bad, it must be something that is stronger than the average, energy drink. So it kind of created this placebo effect by being the opposite of what most people would have done.
That's for sure a thing. So as a tree hugger, I switched over to Tom's toothpaste, like super green brand. And they clearly don't put in whatever the other companies do that make the toothpaste taste like fuzzy and fizzy and like
that little sharp flavor or something.
Yeah, it doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Tom's doesn't put that in there. So it takes a minute to get used to that. I had to recondition myself to like, oh no, my teeth are still getting clean. It's just that the, Unilever and Procter and Gamble aren't tricking me into believing that it's effective through that flavor. That's really interesting.
That power of placebo is crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have two left here. So what do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Work smarter, not harder. Mm-hmm. I believe in working hard. People, and I'm not sure anybody I know agrees with me, but I find that I get a competitive advantage by working harder than my competitor, is the person next to me, or the guy down the street. I'm going to hustle more. I'm going to put in more. I work long hours. 4-hour work week to me sounds ridiculous. I put in 50 hours a week. I don't sacrifice any time with my 2 kids. I got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, but I work really effing hard. And it has made a huge difference in my career, and I'm going to keep doing it. So that, yes, I'm working smart. I have a virtual assistant. I use a million productivity tools. I've got processes, and I've delegated my whole company. I have a CEO. My role is very narrow, but I'm going to kick ass by working very, very hard, and I don't regret it.
I love it. And I'm totally with you. Absolutely.
You never hear that though, right? Who says that? Hey, go work. We should all work harder.
It's rare nowadays. I think there is a good thing going on, like self-care, rest, nurture, all that stuff. But I think the pendulum sometimes swings too far, and it's like, we don't want to work hard. But there's definitely an inherent value I get. Like at the end of a day, when I really put it in, when I leave it all in the field, so to speak, I feel good.
You touched on something that I think is really relevant, because you leave it on the field, that sports thing. Mm-hmm. In sports, they say that work hard. If I was training for a marathon, everyone would say, "Oh yeah, come on, keep going." But that's the only category where people make that where people use that encouraging, motivational, push harder thing. Mm-hmm. Everything else, we're supposed to like take it easy, or use a tool, or not work, work smarter. I get that, but no, I'm going to leave it all in the field. Heck yeah, man, I'm with you.
All right, last one. What's a career choice that you considered but didn't pursue?
Staying in China. I was a white boy with fluent Mandarin in Beijing in 1996. Who knows what would have happened? There were more bikes than cars in China. Like I left fluent in the local language. I left the country right before it exploded and went through like 1,000% growth. So would I be, would life have been really interesting? What would I have done? Would I be in Chinese movies or some oil executive discussing?
That would be wild, right? Like
who knows what
in China?
Yeah, no. Totally. Some of my friends became, sure. Yeah. They were there were kids in my class, like white guys who were making music videos for like that. That's something that those guys did from my class in that school. Yeah. There's like a media path that was really easy for fluent Westerners. Anyway, I don't regret it. I want to live in Chicago. I live in Chicago. Goal, let life go.
Language?
No, my Chinese is pretty rusty. It's okay, but it's not. It's definitely not improving. It's fine.
One of those things. It's like dormant though. Like as soon as you like start practicing again, it comes back in a week or two.
Yeah, I think it's plateaued at a pretty low level. I can have a conversation. I cannot read or write or understand full speed like Chinese TV. Mm-hmm. So I can make myself understood. I'd be thrilled if I landed. Someone dropped me in the middle of China right now, naked and afraid. I'd be pumped. I'd be like, great. This will be, yeah. But no, I haven't really maintained it. When would I? It doesn't come up.
Get an opportunity to practice. Nah. Sure. Yeah. All right, cool. So actually one last question, but this is more self-serving. So where can people find you online? Where do you want to point people to?
We mentioned, wow, we covered everything. Mm-hmm. Or LinkedIn is my best social network. You can find me there. I have my LinkedIn set to prioritize the follow button. Mm-hmm. But if you click more and go down to connect, I encourage anyone who hears this to feel free to connect with me and send me a connection request. Orbitmedia.com is where I write an article every 2 weeks. So that other than that, there's a book that might be out of print. We're updating it, so we're going to let it go out of print. But if you can find Content Chemistry on Amazon, it's still out there somewhere. YouTube, I've got an active channel there. And all the other usual places. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm everywhere else.
Nice. I've got a copy of Content Chemistry, and it is great. So if people can find that would be amazing. All right. Well, thank you very much. This was super fun.
You. Wow, it's so different. I loved this. Thanks, Alex. This was a pleasure.